On this week's Hockey Inside Out, will Kovalchuk save the Canadiens, and has Price found his mojo? Welcome to this week's Hockey Inside Out, which is brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street. That's the one across from the Bell Centre. Your home away from home for Canadiens road games. Okay, with us on the show today, Stu Cowan finally decided to show up for work. Thanks for showing up, Stu.
Back from beautiful Detroit.
Oh yeah, I heard it was lovely there. CBC Daybreak's Jessica Rusnak and comedian Joey Elias. He may be 36, but Ilya Kovalchuk is proving that he still has some gas left in the tank. In his first 5 games with the Canadiens, he scored an overtime goal, racked up some assists, thrown his weight around on the ice, and more importantly, he's fit in surprisingly well with the team's fast-paced dynamic. His arrival on this fast-sinking Canadian ship has acted as the much-needed life preserver the team has so desperately been grasping for if they're going to keep any small semblance of a playoff hope alive. What has surprised you most about Ilya Kovalchuk's play with the Canadiens so far?
Well, I don't know if it's a surprise, but he's been fun, right? Mm-hmm. Canadiens fans, I think, needed some fun this season. It's fun to watch a guy who has that offensive talent. The thing that maybe surprised me a bit when they got him, my concern was he doesn't have a good reputation as far as a room type guy, right? I remember talking with Nate Thompson after they got him, and Nate Thompson, I have the utmost respect for, said, no, he says, Kovi's a great guy. He's a happy-go-lucky guy. He says, I love the guy. He's great. And he's been that in the room. The players really love him. Nick Suzuki was telling me the other day, he said, I sit in my locker style, I look across, and I'm like, that's Ilya Kovalchuk. So he's having that impact on the young kids. These kids grew up playing video games using him as their player. So I think the surprise is that he's really fit in well in the room. The guys really, really like him. Nate Thompson was right. I'm not surprised about his assessment about what a good guy he was. I sat down for a one-on-one with him. He couldn't have been nicer. He couldn't have been more open and talkative. So I think that's maybe a surprise that people who didn't know Kovalchuk or weren't around him maybe didn't see that side of him.
What surprised me is the fact that he's had, right from the start with this team. I thought that there was still something left in the tank for Ilya Kovalchuk, but I thought maybe it would take him a few games to get going, shake off the rust, as he hasn't played since November. But right away, he said that he has something to prove, that he wants to continue to play hockey, that this is not the end for him. He wants to get another contract, and I think his ability to be an impact player right away is the thing that's impressed me with Ilya Kovalchuk.
The surprise is that he's been so effective right from the start. Mm-hmm. Being 36 out of the game a little bit, I thought, okay, it's going to take him a little bit of time, and then he'll get into the system and he'll start playing better. But right out of the gate, you talk about somebody who is happy to be here. Mm-hmm. The smile on his face when he signed, the contract, the picture with the first puck from that goal, the smile could not be bigger. When was the last time you saw somebody sign in Montreal that was that excited to be here? Yeah. I'm not saying that free agents or other players aren't excited, but this man has brought excitement back to the dressing room, and for the first time in a long time, he's brought people out of their seats.
And when
Nate Thompson, the other thing he was saying is that he's never seen anybody work harder in the gym than Ilya Kovalchuk. He's still in great shape. Yes, he isn't fast. He's lost some of his legs, but he's still in great shape. He's still really strong on the puck. And as I said, he's seems to be a fun guy to be around, and he's a fun guy to watch. Max Domi saying that overtime goal. He says, how many guys can do that? Come to the blue line, slow down, almost to a crawl, and then pick a corner and go post in. It was like a video game goal.
It was vintage Kovalchuk. That overtime winner was just perfect.
And the way that the teammates reacted too is, I think, showed just how much respect he has in the locker room as well.
They can't fake that, right? That just showed you how much his teammates really do like this guy.
Yeah, it's awesome to watch as a fan. You can see that his energy really affects the team, and his skill like that doesn't go away just because you turn 36.
And Marc Bergevin, who takes a lot of heat, including from us here. Good for him signing him. At the time he signed him, he said it was a no-risk move, and it is a no-risk move. He had absolutely nothing to lose, and it worked out. It was a good move by Bergevin, and when it comes to the trade deadline, maybe he'll be able to flip him for a draft pick or something. So it was kudos to Marc Bergevin on signing him.
And again, that was the move that I think everybody was waiting for from Bergevin in terms of what's he going to do? What's he going to do? And everybody was assuming there's going to be a big trade. There's going to, call-ups from the minors. And then typical Bergevin pulls this magic card out of nowhere and pulls out an all-star and is making that all-star an all-star again.
Without giving up anything.
Mm-hmm.
And for very little money. Mm-hmm.
When Drouin, Armia, and Gallagher return, where do you see Kovalchuk fitting in with the team?
Well, that's going to be a thing for Claude Julien to work with. An NHL scout told me, he says, the thing with Kovalchuk, he has to sort of get his milk and cookies. He has to be on one of the top lines or top 2 lines and get his power play time. I think that's what happened in LA. They were putting him down 3rd line, 4th line. He has to play on a top line. He has to play power play, and he has to play with some good players. I think Philip Danault with Gallagher, Philip Danault's a perfect centerman for Kovalchuk because he just works so hard and he's skilled enough to get him the puck and find him in that. So they're going to have to keep him one of the top 2 lines. They can't drop him down below that, or you're going to lose his effectiveness.
I think it's a great situation for Claude Julien to have these guys that are the playmakers and trying to find where they can fit up into your lineup. But I think, if Kovalchuk is doing well with Danault and Tatar, keep him there, and then decide to juggle the lines a little bit later on. But it's nice to see once those players come back what the lineup's actually going to look like.
Well, it's a good problem to have, for a team that's had 2 long losing streaks, to get these players back from the injury list. And have a guy like Kovalchuk as an addition. This is a nice problem for a coach to have all of a sudden. Earlier in the season, you're talking about sending this guy down and bringing this guy. Now, when everybody is healthy, maybe, all of a sudden, magic happens.
Well, a Domi, Suzuki, Kovalchuk line wouldn't be too bad as your second line. When Gallagher comes back, you put him back with Danault and Tatar. That's 2 not bad number 1, number 2 lines.
Yeah. After returning from a concussion last week, Brendan Gallagher played 1 game before complaining about headaches the next morning, and he hasn't played since. Do you think the Canadiens' medical staff deserves some blame for pushing him back a little bit too soon?
Well, none of us are doctors here, right? And the Canadiens have doctors, and he obviously passed the concussion protocols, or they wouldn't have put him back on the ice. Gallagher, he wanted to play. He probably wanted to play 2 minutes after he got up from the ice after getting that knee in the head. But the thing that I worry is he had the tinted visor. So if you're wearing a tinted visor, you're probably not 100%. And like this team isn't, the odds of this team making the playoffs are 3% or something now. I don't.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I'm thinking it would have made sense. I said we're not doctors, but common sense would make you believe it would have been better to maybe just let him sit out until after the bye week and bring him back. But again, concussions are weird things, right? Different people react differently, and you never know what's going to happen. I just hope Brendan Gallagher gets better.
I just don't know in professional sports if they're really actually taking concussions seriously. Even the terminology when it comes to concussions, a lot of time they still use that word. It's a mild concussion, and any doctor could tell you there's no such thing as a mild concussion. You either have one or you don't. And for Brendan Gallagher, at that point, they were on that losing streak. I think everyone was getting a little bit tense on the team, and they were looking for ways to get out of this losing streak, and Brendan Gallagher felt up to playing again. The doctor said, yeah, he looks good, let's throw him in, and maybe he could be that spark plug, bring that energy, be the difference maker, and get us out of this slump that we need, and then everyone can breathe a little bit easier. But that was not the case. They ended up losing that game, and then Brendan Gallagher's out again. But I just think, at this point the season, when you look at where the team is, give him more time. Make sure he's 100%, rather than rushing him back and saying, he seems like he's okay, but give him that extra time to make sure that he's fully healed from this concussion.
And listen, concussions are the weirdest thing. I know this is going to sound weird. I've had about 8.
Just this morning.
Yeah, getting out of bed is rough.
Life of a comic is tough, man.
It is. Let me tell you, those tomatoes come in fast. But concussions are like, look at some football players will get a concussion and they miss 3 seasons. And then other guys will come back right away. And that's the hockey thing as well, is that you pass the protocol, you feel good, you go out and play. And we've seen this with other players before. They come back, they play 1 or 2 games, and then they get that symptom again. And then in some cases, it becomes long-term. So what I would say to a guy like Gallagher, who's so competitive, and the fire's in his belly, and he wants to be in the pit, in the crease, doing his thing every game, but you've got to say to a guy like this, listen, you're still very young, and you have an immense amount of talent. You've got a great career ahead of you. Let's just take our time on this. Let's be overcautious, because a concussion can ruin your career, and not even your career. It could ruin your life.
Yeah.
Well, I'm reluctant to criticize doctors. I'm not reluctant to criticize the NHL. Gary Bettman still doesn't see a link between concussions and CTE, which is, every other league, every person with a brain knows that that's it. He refuses to admit it. You look at George Parros, and now a former fighter, scrapper, somehow leading the NHL player safety department. Look at some of the rulings when guys get headshots, and that's okay, we'll let that pass. So the NHL it has a big problem, I think, more so than the doctors. The NHL, as long as Gary Bettman keeps his head buried in the sand when it comes to the long-term impacts of concussions, I think stuff like this is going to continue to happen. We're going to continue to see the cheap shots on the ice, which, you know, George Parros gives you a little slap on the wrist and maybe a $2,000 fine, and carry on, boys. And I feel sorry for these players long-term. You look at Andrew Shaw, former Canadian, the Chicago Blackhawks now. He's been out a month or so now with a concussion that he had. I mean,
Mark Savard.
and Andrew Shaw spoke openly with me about how he used to lie to the doctors. He'd tell the team, "I feel great, I feel fine." Then he'd go home in his home, sit in his bedroom with the blinds closed in darkness until his wife finally told him, "If you don't tell the doctors, I'm going to tell them."
Well, I mean, one of the things about concussion protocol in the NFL, and again, the NHL doesn't have a really great thing, but some of the NFL players were saying that they cheat. You know, they dumb down their answers at the beginning of the year so that when they do have to take that test in you know, the medical tent during a game, they don't have to be 100% because they've already dumbed down their answers. So for a player like Gallagher to say, "Yeah, I'm feeling great," there's no harm in letting this guy rest for 1 or 2 extra games, weeks even.
Especially in a season where the playoffs are already a long shot at best.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen against versus Chicago tonight, but as of this taping, Carey Price has been playing like his old self, at least for the past few games. Do you think the old Carey Price is here to stay? Has he found his mojo?
This is the new Carey Price. I've said it on this show before. Carey Price now is like this. It's been 3 seasons, I think, like that now, where he gets on a hot stretch, he can carry the team, and then all of a sudden he dips. And the Canadiens go into a slump, and then he comes back, and then he goes down. So this is who Carey Price is now. He's not the goalie who can have Vezina-type numbers through the whole season. He's hot and cold, and the Canadiens are hot and cold when Carey Price is hot and cold. The last 2 games he's been outstanding. He's been just absolutely outstanding, and that's why they're paying him $10.5 million a year. I mean, people, you know, blame the defense, blame the breakdowns, blame too many grade A chances. Yeah, but that's why you're paying your goalie $10.5 million a year, is to cover up some of those mistakes that the young defense makes, and he hasn't been doing it. Now that we see him doing it, the Canadiens are winning again, but there'll be another slump coming up, I think. I think that's just the way Carey Price is right now.
Yeah, I agree with you that Carey Price is definitely inconsistent when it comes to his play, but I think in the last few games, the team has been playing better defensively as well, so that he's been getting a lot of help from his teammates and not having to be left out there to dry. So I think that's also a difference maker with the performance of Carey Price. Now, if the team's able to continue to play like that and Carey Price is able to, you know, feel good about himself and have the confidence that he has after these few games, hopefully he can find this a little bit more consistency and like extend it a few more games.
Yeah, and I think just to throw another kudos to Mark Bergevin, because I criticize him enough when he does things that are wrong, but you know, Marco Scandella was a good pickup also, and I think it stabilized the defense, the 3 defense pairings a bit, and that's helped Carey Price also.
I think Price, when he came out and said he was frustrated, I think he definitely took a step back, looked at himself. And then the last 2 games, he has looked like vintage Carey Price. That save he made the other night against Calgary in the 3rd period, going from one post to the other, that was vintage Price. I think he kind of, you know, just goalies are weird creatures, you know that, but they've got this vision, and sometimes it just, when you're in that zone, and right now Carey Price is in that zone, and again, I don't know what's going to happen against Chicago. Is he going to play back-to-back games tonight and tomorrow? Who knows? I mean, that's the only thing that worries me about Carey Price is, again, overworking him.
But you can tell when he's on. You can just tell when he's focused and he's tracking the puck, and everything he's just zoned in. And when he's not, you can tell also. You know, he goes behind the net and misplays a puck and sort of casually gets back in the net. It seems like his mind wanders or something at times. And when he's focused, like he has been the last couple of games, I mean, he's still probably the best goalie in the world. But he can't, in my opinion, he can't do that anymore for an entire season. You can go on a 10-game stretch, a 12-game stretch, but then they're always with the up. You just sort of, it's like a roller coaster ride. You know the down's coming, and probably coming again this season too.
Well, again, he's just got to manage the physical and mental fatigue, especially the mental fatigue as a goalie. I mean, you know, the other night he made saves that earlier in the season they kind of went in, and I don't remember seeing Carey Price look at his glove as much as he has this
Or pucks
season.
hit him and then go in the net.
Right, and then the last 2 games, all of a sudden he's making those saves again. He's making the the big glove save. He's moving across the crease better. Maybe he's feeling better. Maybe there was a physical element to his game that we didn't know, that he had like a little twinge here and there. That's healed maybe. I just think he looks really, really good, and if he can stay focused like this, who knows? Listen, the way they played against Calgary, I had a hard time believing that this team has lost 8 games twice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were just so good. They came out of the gate flying. There was the energy that everybody
Without
wanted.
the key players that are still injured.
Right, and they were hitting, they were physical, they got the goaltending. I mean, that's the team everybody expected to show up at the beginning of the season.
Now, they need Carey Price, and even Claude Julien in his post-game news conference the other night was asked the question, sort of leading, like, how big is Carey Price in the room, and how much does he mean to the team, and how this and this. And Julien's answer was basically, paraphrasing, he needs to play better. Like, I don't care how good he is in the room. I don't care what they're paying him $10.5 million a year to stop the puck. He's got to stop the puck.
Okay. The first half of this show has been brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street. Across from the Bell Center, they do holiday parties and corporate events. Heading into Wednesday night's game against Chicago, the Canadiens have only scored 14 goals in their past 7 games. They used to score all the time. What happened to the team's offense?
I think perhaps they're focusing too much now on the defense part of their game. We saw this before when the power play wasn't working, then the penalty kill would work. The penalty kill is working, the power play is not going. So I think it's just a matter of shifting focus and then also remembering, okay, we're playing better defensively, but we can't forget about trying to score goals, especially when you're seeing goals not necessarily coming from the players that you expect them to come from. As you saw, Ben Sherrod a few weeks ago was the only goal scorer in that game. But I think that's perhaps it, that they're out of the winless streak. However, I think their full confidence is not necessarily back, so they're sort of taking baby steps to try and get themselves out of that hole that they dug themselves.
I think with the players, Armia and Gallagher and Drouin out, excuse me, I think they had to focus more on defense because I think they knew the goals weren't going to come. And as we were saying earlier, when Carey Price isn't playing like Carey Price, you got to tighten up also. So I think it's more a case of the focus has been put more on defense because they realize they're not going to win if they get into a shootout, and especially the way Price has been playing and with the key guys out. So I think there's been more of a focus on the defensive system and worrying more about your own end and then getting the puck out, and I think that's why we've seen it. But they ended the winless streak doing that.
I think we answered the question a little bit earlier when we were talking about who does Kovalchuk play with when all the other guys come back. You look at those numbers from the injured players, that's a lot of your offense right there. So when they come back, maybe Gallagher doesn't come back as soon as we all want him to, but now with Kovalchuk back there, I think the goals are going to come. I think it's just a matter of patience. You talk about Price going up and down. Every team is going to go through a little spell where they go a little dry in terms of the goal scoring, and then they pick it up. So it's just a cyclical thing. I think Montreal's offense will get going as long as when their offense picks up, their defense doesn't suffer again, and then. Again, if they play like they did against Calgary, crazy things can happen.
Well, where they've really improved is their penalty kill. They're at like 92% for the last 10 games, even up 2 goals and in 25 power plays. And that was the biggest problem earlier in the season. And part of that has to do with Ryan Poehling and Nick Suzuki and the young guys showing that they can be penalty killers. Ryan Poehling, you hear people criticizing him, he has no points in 19 games. Ryan Poehling has played really well for this team, and Claude Julien has broken him in really well, starting him on the 4th line with a veteran like Nate Thompson, sort of learning the NHL game, not worrying about having to score goals. Then he bumped him up to the 3rd line, and you see him going to the net and going to the net and going to the net. And if you follow me on Twitter, I kept saying the goals are going to come. They're going to come if he keeps playing the way he does, and then it finally did. But to have 2 21-year-old guys that can kill penalties in the NHL, moving forward, that's a big thing for the Canadiens. That's a really big thing.
I think one of the problems with Ryan Poehling is just because of that amazing game that he had last season, his first NHL game where he scored a hat trick and the shootout winner, that everyone said, now you have to remember, Ryan Poehling's not going to play like this every single night. And I think people sort of forgot about that and lost their patience. And then they started to think, what's going on with this guy? But I think there's going to be a lot more goals coming his way, especially after the game against Calgary when he scored. And he said, it was such a relief. It was such a weight off his shoulder that I think now he's not going to be thinking about that too much.
But if you look at his stats from St. Cloud State University, he was never really a goal scorer. I mean, to me, Ryan Poehling moving forward is like a solid 3rd line center and who can kill penalties. But this team needs him. He's a big physical presence. He plays hard against the wall. He's hard on the forecheck. He can skate, a big guy who can skate. And as I said, I was happy to see him get the goal because I think it's going to lift some weight off his shoulders. And I'm also, Claude Julien deserves some praise for the way he handled him, just breaking him in slowly, let him get his feet wet, let him get comfortable, let him realize that he doesn't have to score right now. He's not in that role. Eventually he will be, but for now it's a learning process. I think a lot of fans don't realize how big a jump it is to the NHL, whether it's from junior or university hockey. And what Nick Suzuki's done this year is remarkable for a kid coming right out of junior, but he went back for that extra year junior last year. Ryan Poehling's never played more than like 38 games a season in university hockey. So it's a pro. They say it's a process. It is a process, and Ryan Poehling right now is really improving well, and I think Claude Julien deserves a lot of credit for that.
I'll go out on a limb and say within the next 10 years, Ryan Poehling will win a Selke Trophy.
You've heard it here first. Well, that is all for this week's show, which has been brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street, across the street from the Bell Center, where you can wait out the traffic and enjoy their $10 specials after every Canadiens game. Tell us your thoughts about Kovalchuk during his first couple of weeks with the Habs. Would you like to see him on the team next year? Let us know in the comments section below. I'm Adam Susser, and we'll see you back here next Thursday.